say it's possible.
Do you think that it would be difficult at all?
I'm going to object anything further. He said he doesn't think
I think he's gone as far as he can go sustained.
So, in this dealing with this particular gun, let's say a 2-year-old did get this weapon. What would they have to do in order to fire it?
That depends on how they find it, to be honest. So if they found it loaded and the safety was off, all they would have to do is pull the trigger. If it was unloaded, then they would have to load it themselves. They'd have to rack the slide in order to do that. If the safety was engaged, they'd have to disengage that manual lever safety or take the key and unlock it if it were locked that way. But again, there's any combination of those things that they would have to do if they were to try to fire the firearm.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Agent Kuykendall. You doing okay up there?
Doing well, thank you.
I mean, if you need some water or something, shout.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Let me, says the man who needs water. Yeah, okay. Yeah. This one study you found, Bill, starts with, it has groupings of ages, right?
It does.
And it says 3 to 4 year olds, 5 to 6 year olds, 7 to 8 year olds, right?
That is correct.
So if we're talking about a 2.5 year old, 2.5 year olds are not listed, 2 year olds are.
Yeah, anything less than 3 was not listed.
Right. So, and this is at a low end on the trigger pull, right?
On this particular firearm,
Yes.
it's about typical. It's around 5 pounds is typical for most pistols. It can be a little heavier. Any lower, that's usually a performance trigger, meaning it's lighter, so it's easier to pull.
And while that was only one study, you're aware of what goes on in the world, right? The world with guns.
Could you clarify?
If I tell you that have you heard, read newspaper articles, seen reports on television about small children that age getting a hold of a pistol, shooting themselves or someone else in an accident? You heard of that?
I've heard of cases, yes.
Tragically, right?
Tragically.
Now, we talked a little bit when we were doing jury selection with folks about their own usage of guns and keeping of guns. If this gun was found by a child, loaded and with the safety off, all they have to do is pull that trigger to fire it.
That is correct, yes.
The most safety conscious of gun owners would keep a safety on. Should keep the safety on.
And it just depends on how they want to keep the gun, if it's going to be ready.
A lot of people don't keep the safety on, do they?
I can't testify to that.
But those small children who got hold of guns and fired them likely did not load a magazine, rack a pistol, and then pull a trigger.
It's hard to say. I can't recall any specific situations.
Thank you, Agent. Have a good trip home.
Anything further? You are free to go. Have a safe trip back to Nashville. Call your next witness. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Have a seat, please.
Can you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
Yes, my name is Phyllis Tonkin.
And can you spell your first and last name for our court reporter?
PHYLLISTONKIN.
And where are you currently employed?
Knoxville Police Department.
What do you do now?
Currently working in the Office of Professional Standards.
Okay. Prior to working in the Office of Professional Standards, did you work in a different capacity at KPD?
Yes, ma'am.
Where was that?
I've been with the department for 22 years. The first 16 and a half years I worked in special crimes. We did investigations with domestic, elder, human trafficking, missing persons, and child abuse. And then I went to internet crimes against children.
Okay. And so in September of 2019, where were you? Which role did you have?
I would be working in the special crimes unit.
Okay. And so what was your title in the special crimes unit?
Investigator.
Okay. And you said that you did that for about, did you say 14 years?
About 16 and a half
16
years.
Okay. Do you recall if on September 14th of 2019 you became involved in a case involving Robin Howington?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And tell the jury briefly how you became involved in this case.
There was a call that came in, and it involved a child that had been shot. I went to the scene with Investigator Riddle, and I assisted him with that case.
Okay. And so the reason that you were involved in the case is that because there was a child victim?
Correct.
Okay. And so major crimes handles homicides, but in this case, since the victim that was deceased was a child, then you become involved as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And is there also somebody with the Department of Children's Services who is assisting as well?
Yes.
Okay. And do you and the Department of Children's Services kind of work in tandem on these types of cases?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you said that you were involved there initially at the scene.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall if you were involved at all with speaking to Ms. Howington at the scene before she went to the hospital?
Not at the scene.
Okay. Did you travel to the hospital and speak with her at the hospital?
I don't believe so.
You're aware that she went to the hospital, though, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And thereafter, she was brought to the Knoxville Police Department to be interviewed, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So when she was brought to the Knoxville Police Department, the interview that was done, that started with Detective Riddle and Brandon Wardlaw, is that correct?
Correct.
And what was your role in this particular interview?
This particular interview, I was with the Department of Children's Services. I did ask some questions in regards to the domestic violence that Ms. Howington was involved in, and then the majority of the conversation was with the Department of Children's Services asking questions.
Okay. And so just so the jury's clear on the timeline, the initial statements that the defendant gave to Investigator Riddle and Investigator Wardlaw, you were not present in the room for those initial statements?
Correct.
Okay. But at some point in time, you got called in and spoke to Ms. Howington, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you recall whether or not DCS came with you into the room when you spoke to Ms. Howington?
They did.
Okay. And was that interview that you did with Ms. Howington, was that something that was recorded?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And again, just so that we're clear, the first set of statements that Ms. Howington did, that was before you even got in the room, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so when you talked to her, that's kind of after she's talked to these investigators for a while, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Let me, if I could have the projector. Did you put it in already?
This is Phil Stonkin.
Okay. Do you recognize the image that's on the screen right now?
Yes.
And is that, tell the jury what that is.
This is the interview on the interview room on the 3rd floor of the Knoxville Police Department.
Okay. And there are 3 people in this interview room, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you the one at the top?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so you have become involved in this case as far as interacting with Ms. Howington, it looks like at 1:53 on the 15th, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, we'd ask to make this the next exhibit and publish this to the jury.
All right, make this Exhibit 44 would be Investigator Tonkin's interview of Ms. Howington.
We got the lights.
This is Phyllis Tonkin. She works in the domestic violence unit. She does this for a living. She's good at this. She does great at it. She's going to talk to you a little bit about her.
The person that just walked into the room, who is that?
Alicia Weaver with the Department of Children
Services.
with the Department of Children's Services.
Violence side of things. And this is a lady from DCS, and she's going to talk to you as well. Okay, I told you other agencies are involved. And they may ask you some personal issues, and I'll stay out of it. Okay.
My name is Phyllis, and I work in the special crimes unit. I'm sorry about your loss. This is Alicia. She works with DCS. We're going to have to ask you some pretty hard questions. But all I want you to do is just to be honest with me, okay? And I know that you've been through a lot tonight. It's okay.
It's really not my legs is dead.
But as you know, the other investigators were in here, I know that things have kind of changed as you talk to them, right?
Correct.
If there's something you need to tell, now's the time to tell you.
I told him the truth.
When he came in, you said that you all had tussled a little bit.
He came in screaming and hollering anyway.
What was he screaming?
Because Destiny didn't want to talk to him on the phone because on Friday she got a bad report at school and he gives her hell about it. He's a narcissist. He's very hard on her. And when he called today to talk to her, he asked her how she did at school yesterday, and she said bad. And he got to jumping her ass, and she ran out of the room. And me and him got an argument. I told him that she shouldn't feel like that. She shouldn't be scared of her day.
So you were in the living room when that happened, or were you in the kitchen?
No, we were on the phone.
You were on the phone. So whenever he came in, where were you all in the house?
I have 2 living rooms. We were in the living room.
Okay. And when you were in the middle, where were you sitting?
I had like a couch and there's like a footstool thing, and I was sitting on the footstool. She was laying watching Netflix with TV, and then Gavin was sitting beside me.
You said that you two had gotten into a tussle. Where did you guys tussle at?
In the doorway between the 2 living rooms.
Okay. And were you in which living room were you in when you were tussling?
We were in the doorway.
In the doorway. Which side were you? Were you on the one closest to the door?
Yes.
Out?
Yes.
Side? Or were you?
Yes. I was trying to get him to leave.
Okay. And where was the gun at?
It was in the closet.
Okay.
And he got me up the stool.
What stool?
There's like those little things like tables with the 2 little bar stools or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's where they eat at. They don't eat at the table, they eat there in front of the TV.
Okay. So and I work in domestic violence, so I'm trying to figure out if we have any charges against the baby daddy. And I say that because if there was a tussle, I want to know kind of, if you could walk me through your tussle.
Yeah, I was trying to get him to leave, and he was basically fighting me not to.
Okay. So you were
In the first living
in the
room.
first living room. So you're tussling. Tell me what he did to you. Because I was looking to see if you had any injuries. Do you have any injuries?
I mean, not really. I sprayed him, so there's probably not anything.
Doesn't that stuff just rub drop off? No? What got in the rain? Is it just kind of?
Not emergency.
I didn't know. Is that normal?
No.
Do you have any marks on your side or anything from where you were tussled? Is that something we might be able to do?
I mean, it was really mainly my arms because, like, I was trying to get him out and he was just trying to hold me and was screaming and hollering. I'm a whore. I don't want to be with him. I got raped by a police officer May 21st, 2019, and I'm about to get a settlement from the city because of it. And ever since he found out about that, being nosy in my house, he's been very persistent about it. And him and the guy I've been talking to got into a fight. Well, they got into a tussle in the yard yesterday. So it's like he's been creeping up on me or, you know, lurking around my house. Stalking me, whatever you want to call it.
You said tell me exactly what he did when you're in the doorway. What did he do?
He put his hands on me and carried
Right
on.
here?
Yes.
Okay. And he just put his hands on you?
And he put his hands on me and pushed me up against, there was like, the doorway's kind of blocked, and it was like, you're no more, blah, 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 you don't want to be with me, you want to be, he said that black girls have sex with anybody, that she never had a kid with me, he's going to stick to his own race from now on. I mean, he was just screaming and calling like a nut, basically.
And you tried to push him out?
Yes. Which is not possible because he's way stronger than me. He lifts weights, he's a big one, he's like a health nut. Goes to the gym every day, all that. And I feel like my son was trying to protect this.
Well, and first off, what's interesting is the fact that you say you're trying to push him out, but you're on the outside.
Right.
You see how that doesn't make sense?
Yeah, I was saying, we went back and forth. It wasn't like we were just in one place at one time. Like I said, he actually pushed me up against the wall, everything. Like, it just happened so fast. Like, it seemed like forever, but it really wasn't.
What we'd like to do is just to see if you have any injuries on you. Is that something you could do?
Sure.
Okay. And then
I know my back is hurting.
So do you recall if you ever took Miss Howington out and gave her the opportunity to show you any injuries or anything like that?
She did go use the restroom, and there were no injuries.
And what?
No injuries.
There were no injuries?
There was I think a little bruise on her shoulder, but other than that, we did not see any injuries.
So, since we're going to do that, what we can do is we can go into the restroom and then we'll check and see if you have any bruising from the scuffle from earlier.
This is my back hurt right here.
Okay. We can see if there's anything back, on your back, and then she'll do the screen, and then we'll come back in here. You good with that? You've been in here for a little bit. You probably need a little break.
That was between us.
What's that?
Between me and Antoine.
Tonight it was. Do you know where that popped off at? No. Do you have any other injuries other than, just your back is real sore?
Yes.
So if you're wanting to try and get an order of protection, we're at the Family Justice Center, okay? And that's where Alicia's housed out of also. What we can do is come in, we'll talk with one of our advocates, and we can try and get an order.
Right now.
Do you You know where he's staying at? I don't see have any friends.
I don't know anything about him. All he knows
You
is
have a baby with
Yeah.
him and you don't know anything about him?
Right, because he's very private person.
Detective Tonkin, after this interview that you did with Miss Howington, do you remember going then back to Balsam Drive with Detective Wardlaw and Detective Riddle and DCS and yourself, where you all kind of did a reenactment? Do you remember that happening?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember being in the room with Miss Howington at some point where it was just the two of you in the room, or maybe the two of you and DCS in the room?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you recall at this point in time if there had been any mention of a black purse as far as you knew?
Not that I knew.
Okay. While you were in the room, did Miss Howington mention something about a black purse?
She did.
Did you relay that information to Detective Riddle?
I did.
Were you also involved in attempting to interview Gavin, the little 2-year-old in this case?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury about that?
We take children to Child Help USA, and they have a forensic interviewer there that is trained to interview children with trauma. They also have expertise in like child abuse investigations. And we did try and so I wasn't in the room. We have a one-way mirror, and myself and the Department of Children's Services sit behind the mirror and watch the interview take place. Gavin went in to the room with the forensic interviewer, who no longer works with DCS, with the Child Help. She attempted to get Gavin to talk to her. He ran to the door, and then she was able to call him back, and then he laid on the floor and took a writing utensil and looked like he was doing something on a piece of paper, and then he gets up. She's still trying to ask him questions, and then he goes back to the door, and that was the end of the interview.
Okay, so there was an attempt made to interview Gavin, is that
Yes.
fair? And he was basically too young to be interviewed.
Correct.
Okay. Let me show you this DVD and ask you to recognize this as a DVD of the Child Help
Yes.
interview that was attempted on Gavin. He could make this the next exhibit.
Mark and file it as Exhibit 45. Why does the jury need to see this? Why does the jury need to see
It
this?
shows the size of this child, it shows how he's interacting with others. It's important for the jury to see.
How long is it?
It is approximately 5 minutes.
All right, play it.
Okay, and so there are 4 different views. Is the purpose of the 4 different views so that people can see the entirety of the room there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And there's a mirror, a one-way mirror where you can see into the room, but it looks like a mirror from the inside. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you are behind that mirror?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you like to draw? No. Look, I have it. Do you want to draw? Look, I got green. Look. No. No, you don't like green? Hey, Gavin, how old are you? How old are you? No? No! Hey, you want to come talk to me? What's wrong, honey? What's wrong? What's wrong? What are you doing? No? Can you tell me what your name is? No? Okay. Can you tell me how old you are? Look, do you want to color in here? Color in the floor? I like to color in the floor. I'll use the green paper that I've already used. Here's some paper. Want to draw a picture? Do you want to color? Can you draw? Can you draw? Would you like to draw? Can you draw me a picture? Hey, Gavin, can you tell me how old you are? I draw. You draw? Tell me what you draw. What is that, Gavin? A dog. A dog? Yeah? Hey, Gavin, who do you live with? A waterfall. I need it. Tell me who you live with, Gavin? Waterfall. What is that? Yeah. Hey, Gavin, can you tell me how old you are? Water? Waterfall? Can you tell me how old you are? Are you done with that one? Okay, let's go back on it, okay? Oh. Hey, Gavin, can you tell me about your family? Oh, that's pretty. Do you want to talk to me a little bit? Hey, Gavin, do you want to come talk with me? Investigator Tonkin, as part of your investigation, did you also participate in taking any measurements of Will Gavin's size?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And to show you, this asks you, do you recognize these set of pictures? It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pictures.
Yes, these are pictures that we took on the day of the forensic interview.
We could make this the next exhibit.
Let those be marked and filed collectively as number 46.
Okay, and so for exhibit number 46, tell the jury, we don't have these on the projector, so you might just have to stand up and show the jury what it is that we're looking at in these pictures.
picture of Gavin, and this is how tall Gavin is.
How tall is Gavin?
I don't have it here somewhere.
Does it accurately reflect how tall he is?
It does.
Okay.
It's about 38,
How tall?
38 inches, is that correct?
yeah, approximately.
Okay. And then what did you guys do to see how far up Gavin could reach?
We had the tape up, and then we basically had to have some fun, try and have some fun with him, and then we were able to get him to reach.
Does she have like a gummy or a piece of candy or something in her hand?
It looks like she's got a piece of candy in her hand.
Okay. And so she's holding it up for him to reach out to?
Right here.
Okay.
And then the next picture is a picture of Gavin reaching for the piece of candy. Then the last picture shows the length of his arm reach.
And, oh, you got one more.
Yep, and then we have pictures where we drew a picture of his hand,
To show the size of his hand.
size of his hand.
Okay. We could publish those to the jury. And then this.
What was the reach? What was the measurement on the reach?
I can read it to you. Can you see that?
Probably not.
The jury can see this, Your Honor, but can you read what
About
that says?
45.
Help him with.
About 45 inches.
All right, and then I'm going to hand you this last set of pictures. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Do you recognize those?
Yes. This first is a picture of Gavin's hands that we drew.
Okay. And so literally you guys just trace his little hand.
Traced his hand.
Okay. And then the other ones?
Then this is, oh, they're together. So this is a measurement of Gavin's hand. This is a measurement of his left hand. A measurement of his right hand. Another measurement of the right hand. Another measurement of the right hand. And another measurement of the right hand.
You can make this collectively the next exhibit and publish it.
Be 47. And how many total photos or drawings was that?
I think it was 11.
8.
It's on 47, there's
That was 47. Cross-examination.
Good afternoon.
Sir?
I don't want to get your title wrong.
Investigator?
Investigator. Investigator Tonkin. We've known each other, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about that third floor in the old KPD safety building.
Yes, sir.
We're watching, we're not now, we were watching that video from that was recorded in that room, right?
Yes, sir.
302. And there is a spot on that floor where people can go and watch that interview, right?
Yes,
There's no two-way glass in that room.
that's correct, sir.
You're just watching the same video that we're watching here on a monitor.
Yes, sir.
Right. When did you arrive at KPD that day?
I could not recall when I arrived.
You asked her some questions about some of the things, right when you sat down, you asked her some questions about some of the things she had told Investigator Riddle and Wardlaw, right?
Yes.
Were you down the hall watching that video?
I was not watching all of the video. I don't remember what part, if I watched any. There were a lot of things going on, and so I can't say that I watched every single second, or if I know I didn't watch the whole thing.
But you did see some of it.
I may have seen some of it.
You see the part where she told him she'd been raped by a police officer?
No.
You see the part where the investigator decides to give her a hug in that room?
No, sir.
Do you remember what was going on in the interview that you did see?
What I did,
Right.
I was sitting there, and the Department of Children's Service was sitting there as well, and she was sitting in front of me.
Do you recall hearing either Wardlaw or Riddle telling Miss Howington, you know, if you say he did it, he's going to have to go through a forensic interview?
No.
Good. So there's only one forensic interview, right?
Yes.
And we just saw
Yes,
an
sir.
attempt at a forensic interview.
Yes, sir.
So that would have been the thing that was, this child was going to be subjected to.
Yes, sir.
Asking him to color and chasing him around the room because he won't sit down.
He's a 2-year-old.
Right. But during that interview, you were on the 3rd floor of the KBD building.
Yes, that's where the interview took place.
Did you see them go into that room?
The
Did you see Riddle, Wardlaw,
No.
and Ms. Howington go into that room?
no,
Were you on the floor when they went into that room?
I don't know. I don't recall if I was on the floor yet or not.
Did you see either of them walk out of that room, either Wardlaw or Riddle walk out of that room while you were there during their interview?
No.
Had they come and asked you to step into the interview and observe, would you have been okay with that?
To observe the interview?
Yes.
Yes. We step in and do interviews with everybody.
If they had come out and said to you, we got a woman in here who's afraid she was raped a while back by a police officer, she's uncomfortable with the 2 of us, would you come sit in the room? You'd have done that.
Yes, sir.
And then, when you come into that room, I believe Detective Riddle tells her that DCS is going to come, there are going to be some private questions that are going to need to be asked, and he's going to leave the room, right?
Yes.
So he left the room.
Yes, sir.
And he goes down that hallway, right? Out of the room.
I don't know where he went, but yes.
And could easily go to the place where you watch the video from, right?
Where who?
Where you watch the feed from the interview room.
He could have. I don't know where he went.
But when you sat down there, you start asking questions that are just a whole lot like what was asked in the interview, right?
I was asking domestic violence questions and what happened.
How'd you lose that fingernail? Where was it? Where was he in the room? Where were the 2 of you in between those rooms? Those kind of questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was really just that was an investigative ploy, right? To get you in the room, to have her now, so you can pull your chair up close, get into space and say, tell me what happened. Get the guys out of the room.
I was going in there with the Department of Children's Services and to talk about the domestic violence.
Is that the entirety of that interview?
No, sir.
Does the Department of Children's Service ask any questions in that interview?
Yes, they do.
But not in the departments.
No, correct. There was more questions asked.
And your questions about domestic violence were questions about what happened at 502 Balsam on the night of September the 14th, 2019.
Yes, sir.
The incident.
I'm sorry.
The incident about which this trial is being conducted.
The incident that led up to what this trial was about, yes.
No further questions. Thank you.
Anything further, General?
Can we approach?
Ladies and gentlemen, I need to take up a matter in your absence. Don't discuss the case. All rise for the jury. Everyone may have a seat. Now, what is the issue, General?
Well, Your Honor, in this DCS record that I took out, that they talk about how she's lost her other child through DCS and things of that nature, that I wasn't going to play for this jury, but now that Mr. Whalen has said to the jury,
Don't talk over her. Let her talk, and then you'll get your turn.
said to the jury, you know, why are there other portions that haven't been played? I feel like I need to play the rest of this interview that includes where DCS is talking about this other child.
What relevance does that have to this?
It has relevance because the defense attorney is making it to this jury that we've taken out portions of this interview that are important. The state's done something wrong, which we've not done. So I'm happy to play the whole interview.
All right.
I watched a video played here where the DC, they talk about this being DCS's opportunity to come in and talk to her, and the only one that talks is Ms. Thompson. And so I asked the question, is this a ploy? Are you just getting back in there just to talk about, get a female in to ask the questions and see if the answers change? I think that's a reasonable question given what they played. I'm looking for I'm pretty sure I had a transcript of that, but I'm not sure because I think there's another interview at the house. If they want to say or have...
Can we both stipulate, if we bring the jury back in here, that the DCS investigator during the course of this interview asked a number of questions of Ms. Howington that the parties agree are not factually germane to this proceeding? Can we agree to stipulate to that announcement?
We can stipulate to that announcement, Judge, and if the state wants to avoid these, they can just tell me when they're offering a redacted video. I haven't been offered I didn't know that redacted video existed.
I mean, I think the record is pretty clean so far in this case, and I really don't want to get into stuff about her having a child removed that doesn't have anything to do with what we're trying here.
Well, it does, because in here she says that the reason the child is removed is because of something that Antoine has done. So that, I think, makes it germane to what we have here, because her feelings about Antoine...
How is it germane now when it wasn't germane 15 minutes ago when you didn't play it?
Your Honor, I didn't play it out of abundance of caution, but now that the defense attorney has said to this jury that we're hiding something from them, I think that it's even more important.
Okay. Your argument to me a moment ago was that the impression is being created that this was all a ruse, that DCS was merely a prop. And what the solution I'm offering is that the parties agree and stipulate that DCS, in fact, during the course of this same interview, asked a number of questions of Ms. Howington that were not germane to this proceeding. Which, doesn't that answer the question that this was a ruse?
Yes, Your Honor.
I think that Mr. Whalen...
That was his argument, though, not
I
mine.
understand. Why does that announcement and agreed stipulation not cure your worries? I really think you're prying the lid off of a box you may not want to pry it off of, General, to go into why she lost another child when you're prosecuting her for felony murder and the perpetration of aggravated child neglect. Do we really want to pry the lid off that box?
I don't know how to undo when the defense attorney stands up and gives the impression to the jury that the state is leaving things out on purpose so that they can't see it. I don't know how to undo that, so that's my concern.
May I suggest a remedy? Stop introducing redacted videos without telling someone you've redacted the video. They did the same thing with the first cruiser video. I said, what are you introducing? the cruiser video. And it turned out it was 2 very brief snippets of the cruiser video. If they don't want me to say why you're doing that, let me know you're doing it before you do it. That's actually required by the rule. They should be telling me what they're introducing, not telling me it's the cruiser video when it's not the full thing, or it's the this interview when it's not the full thing.
Folks, we can sit here and argue for the next couple of hours about what has transpired and what hasn't. We can't change the fact that this video has been introduced. Investigator Tonkin has testified about what transpired in the interview room between she and Ms. Howington. You have cross-examined and you asked the questions about the DCS worker being there. I am respectfully suggesting to both of you that I am offering you both a relatively painless way out of this dilemma that we find ourselves in. I'm going to have to listen to what was said in the DCS portion of the interview before I can rule on it. Are you that insistent that you want this in the record, General?
I think it's actually already in the record. I mean, she talks about it in her interview with Detective Riddle. I think that the caution was we just didn't want to draw more attention to it. But she's already said it in her interview. Like, she specifically talks about the issues, and she hasn't seen her child in all these years. It's already in the record. Just put it out there.
How long is it? Why don't we do this? Why don't we take 10 minutes and let's just think it over and what the ramifications are of introducing this evidence. And then if I have to, I'll come back and listen to it. We'll stand in recess for 10 minutes.